the emissaries, I wasn't sure if we should really go so much weiter in Shir, because I don't know how much of the olim are holding by Zion, which is really what I wanted to get to. But then Mamish Faket, we need to move on the olim a little bit to Zion, because we don't have that much longer. And Tess, these are big, Seifim with a lot of Gemaras and Be'alochas and everything else. So it's Kedai that at least some of the olim are holding by Zion, but if you're not, please, at least for sure by Wednesday, holding by the Sugi and Zvachim, preparation for Daf Yomi, so that you can learn the Sugi of Shiras Zeh Kibusa, which is a Gavaldiga Sugya, Be'ez Hashem. I'm sure everyone knows about what happened this morning. Mr. Melaben don't know the details. We don't have to know the details, just to know that it's Shem Yirachim. And we have to understand that the Rabban Shem does everything with a cheshbon, and often we have to understand also that we are also in part of the cheshbon that the Rabban Shem had when whatever happened this morning happened. We were also in the Rabban Shem's cheshbon that it would affect us, and it's meant to affect us. We're meant to think about these things. We're meant to think about, when Elul, it's a time of Chaim, it's a time of life. It's a time that we're asking for our life. It's a time that we should be appreciating our life. One of the Ramazim of Elul is Dafka we learn from Ari Miklot, to understand the appreciation of life, to realize the gewaldige schus that we have, to be able to sit and learn, to be able to get off a bus and come to Kollel, to be able to come and sit in the Beis Medrash. And the Rebbeinu Shem had us in mind with the cheshbon, that everything that happens, obviously those people that need a refuah shalema would have a refuah shalema, and those people, Nebuch, Mishpacha and the family should be in a chama. So this should be the end of all the tzoros of Kollel Yisrael. It's so, when we hear these things, it shakes us. It shakes us, and it should. And if it doesn't, then start thinking a bit deeper. It shakes us to hear about what goes on, and how a person can go on a bus thinking that he's just going to his next destination, whether it's someone sending their child to yeshiva, or a person going to work, or a person going to kollel, or a woman going to the office, whatever it is. We have to utilize the moments that we have. We have to utilize every moment that we have is an opportunity to grow, is an opportunity to get close to Rabbeinu Shalom, Dveikus B'Hashem, and we're part of the cheshbon. For whatever reason this happened to happen this morning, I don't know, and obviously nobody knows, but there's no shaila that the Gemara tells us that everything happens for a cheshbon, that we are also affected, that sometimes we need a little bit of a wake up. Sometimes we need to realize, do we really appreciate the fact we're in Eretz Yisrael? Do we really appreciate the fact that we're sitting in Kollel? Do we really appreciate the fact that we're able to sit and learn, that we're able to do something? It's a gavaldige schus. And it should be the inu nishmosa for those that lost their lives, and those that need the refuah shalema. This is news that we don't want to hear, and those it's painful. It's painful. It's painful. You have children. You send your children off to school. You send them off to yeshiva. Give them that hug. You give them that kiss. Who knows? It's something we have to think about. We can't let these things go by and just say "Oy nebuch" and then move on. And we'll eat the lunch today, regular lunch, and dinner tonight, regular dinner, as if kiddu, nothing happened. Baruch Hashem, it didn't affect us in a personal way. But there are many that it did. And even if we don't know them, we have to think about that. The tsar, the pain, say a kapitel Tehillim, say a Mishnah, put something in stocker, do something small. You can't let these opportunities and these situations go by and just go weiter. It's chaval. The Rebbeinu gives us an opportunity to constantly, but sometimes in a bit more of a shaking. Kenzan, I don't know, but we just can't let this opportunity go by. Whether it's learn a bit more, learn a few minutes, beli hefsek, b'schos, leinu nishmas, those that Nebuch lost their lives this morning, or those that need the refuah shalema. The koyach of Torah is the greatest koyach in the world. There's nothing greater than the koyach of Torah. Torah is matzel. Torah does it. It's a shmira for everything. We have to utilize it. We have to realize it. We can schmooze about the news, talk about it, how many, what happened, what was the pshat, how many people were there. People like to discuss it, the hak, the news, what's going on. So, it's also Yetzirah. But maybe, you know what? After Shir, we have 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is, until Mincha, until the Olam leaves. Let's learn. Let's utilize the opportunity to sit and steig and learn. And Be'ez Hashem, the Rebbeinu Shem does things that are further away. We don't want them to come any closer. And of course, those that need the refuah shalem should have refuah shalem, and those never that need the ilun nishmasai, the Torah that we learn, the steiging that we do, should be also an ilun nishmasai to them as well. Be'ez Hashem, we should only have simchas b'shabta shema v'suras tovas. So I want to just go through a few of the seifim that we left off with last time. Last time we left off with Seif Gimel. The couple of Kenim B'Shabbos we did. I want to go a little bit through Dalet Hey Vav Zayin, but really where I want to get to is really Seif Zayin, because that is very, very negei lamaisa. And then we can move on, Rabbi say, Hashem, next year, we're going to get to Seif Tes, which is the Sugya of the Shurasas Ekibusai, and we'll see some of the big Yisodas of Melaben over there, that after we can go back also to Seif Aleph and the Olam has time to Chazorah to see everything else as well. So, Lemaisa, just a little smaller aura, I guess, in Seif Daled. There's actually a lot of interesting things in Seif Daled, mainly Muktzah and Yonim, but Rashi explains this, this press, this weight, whatever it was, of the Balibatim, is only mutter l'tzorech Shabbos. But to actually kovish begodim for the choil, Zuk Rashi, that's going to be also. Sasema says it's mashma from Rashi that to be kovish for Shabbos itself, if you're doing it l'tzorech Shabbos, it's mashma from Rashi that it's going to be mutter. And the question is why? Why did the Mishnah then say quite clearly, right? Shaloi kovish, you shouldn't do it. It's been mashma always across the board. It's also. And it must be that stam to do it is the yomim rabim, the kama yomim, which means that's why it's the tzorech chol, that's the normal way of doing it. The Sfas Emes learns that pshat in Rashi, asks the Sfas Emes to feed that pshat in Rashi. The Mishnah really should have said l'tzorech Shabbos is shori, just like it said in Daf Kuf Yud Gimel by the mitzvahs, by the beds. It also said l'tzorech Shabbos. Zuk the Sfas Emes. He answers that it's also to be kovish on Shabbos, even at Tzorech Shabbos. Why? Because of Tikkun Mona, and Rashi is maskim to this Yesod. If you look at the Levush has a slightly different agdora to what the Issa is. It's Derech Chol. That's what he says. The Rashash has a similar mahalach as well in that sugya. Al Kaponim, that's how the Sfas Emes learns the Rashi in on Seif Dal. When you get to Seif Hey now, like I said, I'm going to go quickly, just giving you a aura on each one before we get to Seif Zayin. In Seif Hey, Rashi in Kuf Mem Amud Aleph, Rashi explains the kasha of the Gemara that's talking about a pishton item of clothing that after it was washed, it became very, very rough. It became very, very hard. So before a person wears it, he sort of rubs it. Mishafshiv, he's rubbing it by his hand, and that softens it. So the suffix of the Gemara is stam b'nei Adam, when the mishavshev a beged, is it to soften it or is it to clean it? That's the kasha. Maskonos of the Gemara is it in order to soften it is going to be mutter, and there's no problem whatsoever. The Ritva is a gavaldik kasha. What's with kavana, backwards and forwards, ikiv atofel, the Ritva goes with the whole thing over there. Then the next sugya of the Gemara goes to a different beged and asks us, what's the ikka machshava when a person rubs that beged? What's the ikka machshava over there? So Rashi says people are much more makbid on a suda than anything else, and therefore because of that it really depends on the kavanah. If the kavanah is to make it clean, to make it better, in other words, if it's for softening purposes then it's mutter, if it's for cleaning purposes then it's going to be asa. That is that. The Aruch HaShulchan, maybe the Olam Sur, says very posh pshat that it said a cholik, if you rub it a little bit, it makes it soft. It doesn't make it whiter. Whereas a suda is asa because it's more kavana for a person to have kavana from a Melaben. But he says that most of our begodim don't really become soft because they don't get hard to begin with. And also he brings like the Magen Avraham as well, that the minig ha'olam generally is to rub it, that there's no problem with that whatsoever with doing that, because we don't have that mitzias, it's not your kavana, and therefore the Aruch HaShulchan, Magen Avraham and others held that there is no problem. Moving on quickly to Seif Vav. In Seif Vav, the Gemara Kuf Mem Aleph brings a machlokes Amoraim, titcha al gabe raglov, that you want to clean it, right? You're walking in the street and you get some mud, and when you come into the shul, you want to scrape off your foot, scrape off the shoe to make sure that there's no mud over there. What's the din? On karka, the Gemara tells us it's not a psik reisha of mashvegumos. Mashvegumos, of course, course, we know is a problem of anything, for example, that is done. It's a gzeira that you may come to mimash v'gumois, like, for example, playing any type of like marbles and things like that on the floor that can be flattened is a problem, because a person osil ashri gumois, which means he'll come to flatten it out, and that's why there's a problem over there, and that's why the issa is of rubbing. Zuk Tosfos that even if you go with Reb Shimon, that dovish einim eschaven is mutter. Over here you were geyser. Why? Because you're being oisik in rubbing it away from your feet, from your shoe, and therefore we're more worried over here. The Ran says as well that we attack a choshesh in this case. That's what Tosfos seems to say. Now the machlokes Rishonim really is how do we paskin? The Rif goes like Shittas Ravina, that only on a koira, only on a very sharp beam, that's the problem. If you don't have that, then you're fine. The Rambam and the Bahag paskin like Rava, only on the koisel, not on karka, and the Tur and the Rosh paskin like Rav Papa, both on the karka and the koisel is going to be mutter. Shulchan Aruch in the Stam halacha paskins like Shittas HaRambam, and then he brings the Rif that even the koisel is asa, whereas the Ramah brings Shittas HaRosh and the Tur being very makel in this case. Now, the poskim discuss what exactly we're discussing. The Mishnah Berurah goes through exactly, the minig, what they used to have outside the shuls. They used to have this beam, but nowadays the Maisa, most of our wood for sure, and even our metal pieces, unless they are sharp, for example, sometimes under a stender or under a table, you have like a metal piece holding in the chair, holding in the stender, holding in the table, and you rub it off and it comes off. That's generally not such a problem for a person to do that, because it's not going to be maklik anything of his shoe, because our shoes are not made in the same way, and therefore there's no real problem with a person doing that in that case. But on the ground itself, obviously, for example, if you're on the grass, you're on the ground, then there obviously is a chashash that a person would be mash v'gumois in that case, which means a person has to be careful. Let's get to Sif Zayin, which is really what I wanted to get to today. Those of you that are not there, okay, be mezaris and try to get there, because we need to get there. This is very negeya for Shabbos Kodesh. The Shulchan Aruch tells us, tit sha'al bigdoi. What happens if a person gets a stain? Right, but it's very negaya. Person gets a piece of chulant, whatever comes on his garment, he gets mud on his trousers, on his pants, whatever, while he's walking. What's the din in that case? So Rashi in the Gemara in Shabbos Kuf Mavav Aleph explains us what's the nafkamina of bifnim and mibachutz. What's the nafkamina? That's something that we're going to have to discuss. What exactly is the nafkamina of mibifnim and mibachutz? Why is there a difference mibifnim and mibachutz in this case? So Lamaisa, we have to understand as follows. The Gemara seems to say that if you have a garment and there is some kind of stain or whatever it is, you're only allowed to rub it on the inside and not on the outside. Rashi says why. So Rashi says on the inside it's not muchach, you're doing it for kibus, and it's not a real melaben because there is no water. I'm sure the olam, if you saw this, immediately pounced on Rashi and said, hold on a second, Rashi, what happened? You're the same Rashi that told us not my kasha. Rabbi Kiva Eiga asked the kasha. Rabbi Kiva Eiga on Shas says, and as I said, Rashi, we all learned, Kuf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph said clearly, Zehi Libunai, where the case of Hamanar Beged, when you have a talis and it's dusty and you're rubbing it and you're shaking it to get out the dust, you are over Melaben. There's no water over there. So Rabbi Kiva Eiga says, how's Rashi over here clearly saying that over here it's not a problem because you're not using water? Then maybe it's not the real Melaben. Answers the Shadsian, Sikot Mem Aleph, that he says like this: what's the chiluk really between Rashi over there and Rashi over here? What's the chiluk between Sif Aleph and Sif Zayin? That's really the question that you have to ask. So the Shatzina says that when you remove dust from a talis, from a cloak, from a coat, or something like that, that you shake the beged, that is the tikkun that's machayiv. Masha'enkin over here, when a person has a stain on his beged, the derech to remove the stain is through water. When a person has dust all over his beged, he generally doesn't put water on it. You give it a shake and it's gone. When a person gets a piece of chulun that's stuck on, he doesn't just shake it off. That's not how you do kibbutz. The mahalach of doing kibbutz by this way is by taking water, because otherwise you're only taking that which is on the surface and not taking that which is on the inside. Mimela the Shatzian says, since you're leaving the stain behind, because when you just took it off without water, that's not real kibbutz. That's why it's okay. By the way, you can medayik from Rashi over there in Kuf Mem Zayin, where Rashi says Zehi Libunai. We spoke about it then. Why did Rashi say such a lashon? Rashi wants to tell you the chiddush here is Zehi Libunai means this is its mahalach. How does one get rid of dust from a beged? By shaking it. Nobody takes water. Water pushes it in. When you get some kind of stain on the outside of your beged, the way is not to shake it. That's not how you melaben. That's not kibbutz. It doesn't help you. Yeah, maybe the shtickle, the piece will come off, but the stain's not going to come off. The way to do it is to start rubbing it together. That is the mahalach. Zut Shatzian, that's the way you do it. Memela that the Soul says a similar chilik as well to answer b'kiveigas kasha. That's why Siv Aleph is Hazoy and Siv Zayin is this way. Now there is a moedik tshuva in the Chibina Rav. In the Doivev Misharim in Shibina Rav, in Chelik Aleph Siman Samach Aleph, he has a different teretz to answer Rabbi Kiveiga's kasha, and he says, really, the emes is there's no difference between dust and any other dirt. There's no nafkamina, right? Like the Shatzian, even though it said that there is. Zuk the Shibina Rav, there's no nafkamina. Stira, Aleph Zayin, Rashi over there to Rashi over here. What's going on? So the Shibina Rav answers the Stira and he says like this. He wants the taina that the sugya of Siv Zayin, he brings Kamarayz, which I'm not going into, look up the tshuva I gave you the Marmokim. He brings down but the case of Siv Zayin of Tit is talking about a beged that's not black and not new, which means you're not makpid on it. That's why mibifnim is mutter, right? Because it's not muchach that you're doing anything. You scratch it with your nail. Memela, that's the pshat in Rashi, because it's not libun without water. Why? Because you're not makpid on it. That's how the Shibina Rav. So it comes out the feed the Doiv Mishon, the Shibina Rav, and that you'll be only allowed to shake and clean a black new beged from tit, but a beged that's not black and you're not makbid on, then you'll be mutter to shake it. Masha Inga the Be'alacha would hold that no, absolutely not. Dust and tit have a very big difference. Why? Dust and tit are different because, in the way that he said it, is that people are automatically makbid on dust. Remember, shaking it is the way to do it, and that's why it's different. So it's not enough kamina on the color and what you're makbid on. It's a matter of whether or not this is the way to do it or this is not the way to do it. So that's the machlokes the Be'alacha and the Doiv Mishram. There is another mahalach, by the way, how they learn as well. There is another mahalach as well, the Ksoisa Shulchan. Reb Chaim No has another mahalach how he learns pshat in the stira between Rashi and Rashi, Siv Aleph and Siv Zayin. If you look at Tiladov Sikot Neches, the Ksoisa Shulchan Kufta Zayin Sikot Lamed Vov, he wants to say very simple. There's no nafkamina between the color of the beged. That's not what he's saying. He's saying over here it's not derech libun. Masha'ein kain, the derech of being similar, I guess, to Rashi. It's the derech of being of cleaning a beged from dust is to shake it. Over here, the derech is to do it with water. Memela, there is no melaben in that case. So it comes out lemaisa that the way that we learn it is that when a person has a stain on his beged and he wants to take it off, so obviously shaking it would be okay, it's not going to help you too much, but there's a mibifnim and there's a mibachutz. What is the nafkamina of mibachim and mibachutz? So first of all, if it's lach, there's a chiluk between lach and yavish. So if it's lach means that it's still moist, right, it got stuck on, you can remove it. Halacha l'maisa on Shabbos, you can remove that stain as long as you leave something in the beged. That means you don't go all the way in. Don't take the sharp part of a knife. This could be negated by doing a tablecloth as well. It doesn't have to be a beged that you're wearing. You have a tablecloth. You take the sharp part of the knife. You sort of squeeze it so it can't forget about schita, but you try to get it out. Everything that's absorbed, that would be a problem. If you're just taking off the surface dirt over there is no problem whatsoever, because number one, that that's not called Melaben if there's something left. And also, if there's a stain that's left behind, it means what's really dirty is that which is absorbed in the beged. And that I didn't move, that I didn't change. I just took off that which is on the outside. And this is very important to remember. In a case when it's moist, you can remove it with your nail, you can remove it with a knife, maybe not the sharp part, you can move it with a dry shmata, obviously not a brush, that for sure not, that you should not do. Now what about the bifnim and mibachutz? What is the definition? When you're if you haven't learned it yet, it's confusing to know what is the difference between mibifnim and mibachutz. So mibachutz means like this. Let's just make it easy. If mibachutz means that I have the stain in the middle, and I go on, and I push it, I fold over the beggar this way, and I'm meshafshav that way, and I'm scrubbing it that way. That's what mibachutz means. It means my action is mibachutz, even though the stain is on the inside. That's mibachutz, and that's asa. Why is that asa? Because that is the way that you clean something. The real way to clean something is take the two halakim of the beggar, scrub it over together, one on each other. That's going to cause a real libun. That's going to cause the inside material, the fibers, to be cleaned, and therefore that's a problem. Masha'en kein mibachutz means if I've got a stain on the outside and I flip it that way and I sort of do like that with the beged, that's mibachutz. That's not the normal way to do it. You're not going to get that much off of the beged when you do it like that. You'll get something off, probably the surface, but you're not going to get so much. Memela, that would be a problem, and that would be okay if it's done what's called mibifnim in that case, because that's not a problem. However, you got to remember hilchos toichin. You have to remember, all lam and tes malachas are intertwined with each other, which means if toichin, of course, only applies, the Gemara says, gedule karka, which means if you have a potato on your jacket, on your sleeve, whatever, and you scrub it with your nail, so now this dry potato is now going to crush. Now, if it was something that was already crushed before, there won't be a problem. But if it was a piece of potato which was never crushed, and now you're with your nail, it got hard, you're scratching it off, now you're over on toichin, which is a problem. So if it gets dry, you have to be worried about toichin if it's gedule karka, and it was never done toichin before. Masha'enkein, if it's not something that was toichinable, if it's not gedule karka, or if it's moist, then again, to do it in a way that's considered to be mibifnim would be okay. To do the way that's mibachutz, which is to rub the inside material together, that would be a problem. And that pretty much is the sugya of Siv Zayin. Mitzvah Shem, what I want to do Siyata D'Shmaya on Wednesday. Again, like I said, Elul is a little bit of a crazy zman for me because of a lot of stuff that's going on in yeshiva. But generally speaking, we'll have Shem maybe on Thursdays, but Maisa and Elul will probably do it on Wednesdays. So we're going to start B'li Neda on Wednesday. We're going to start the sugya of Shuras Zekibusay. It's a fascinating sugya. It's a gewaldige sugya. It's a lomdish sugya. It's very, very, very chashuv sugya. Very, very negei halacha l'maisa. So hopefully by Wednesday morning, the olim will already be there, 9:50, because for Shteit 9:30 the olim doing Torah Dvorah, but at 9:50 we start the sugya of Shurasei Kibusoy, so that on Wednesday by share time we can already be a little bit in Yonim, so we can be maktim the item over there. Okay, Shkaya Chaboisai, we'll see them.